Regular meeting to order on Tuesday, May 16th, 2017. At this time, we'd like to invite Pastor Kevin Tracy from Maricopa First Baptist Church to the podium, at which point he will offer us the invocation, after which I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. Would you push that button?
Most Heavenly Father, Lord God, I ask you to just prepare our minds and our hearts as we approach your throne. Father, we are just so grateful for your grace and mercy that you bestow upon us. The innumerable pleasures that you give us, Father, we thank you for those. Father, we just beseech you this evening that you be among us this evening, that you would grant this counsel, wisdom, and discernment. We ask for your hand of protection upon this community. Father, we are just so grateful for all that you have accomplished through these servants. We pray, Father God, that you would just continue to protect us and guide us and lead us. And ultimately, Lord, we just pray that Christ receive all glory and honor. And it's in his name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Thank you, Pastor. Appreciate it. I'd like to move to a roll call, please.
Councilmember Chapados?
Here.
Councilwoman Gussie?
Here.
Councilmember Manfredi?
Here.
Councilmember Smith?
Here.
Councilmember Wade?
Here.
Vice Mayor Brown?
Here.
Mayor Price?
Here.
Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Great, thank you very much. We appreciate your patience today. We have a bunch of things that we are trying to get accomplished and through, as well as the regular agenda, but also between the work session and the e-session items that we had to attend to. So with that, I'd like to move to item 3 on the agenda, Proclamations, Acknowledgments, and Awards. We are going to rearrange the order just a little bit. We're going to do the Economic Development Proclamation first, after which we will do the Youth Council Graduating Seniors Recognition. Then we will move to 3.4 on a student choice, after which we will then do the Maricopa Citizens Leadership Academy. So that's kind of the order in which we will go about it. And I would also ask your patience with me, as I'm a little under the weather, as you can hear in my voice, so my apologies. So Denise, you're here right there. Great. Excellent. So tonight we have a proclamation about economic development and the work that economic development does in our city and other places. Whereas the International Economic Development Association, or IEDC, the largest professional economic development association dedicated to serving economic developers, is celebrating its 91st year as the premier organization in 2017. And whereas the International Economic Development Council provides leadership and excellence in economic development for communities, members, and partners through conferences, training, courses, advisory services, and research, in-depth publications, public policy advocacy, and initiatives such as the Accredited Economic Development Organization Program and the Certified Economic Developer designation. Whereas economic developers promote economic well-being and quality of life for their communities by creating, retaining, and expanding jobs that facilitate growth, enhance wealth, and provide a stable tax base. And whereas economic developers stimulate and incubate entrepreneurialism in order to help establish the next generation of new businesses, which is the hallmark of the American economy. And whereas economic developers are engaged in a wide variety of settings, including rural and urban, local, state, provincial, and federal governments, public-private partnerships, chambers of commerce, universities, and a variety of other institutions. And whereas economic developers attract and retain high-quality jobs, develop vibrant communities, and improve the quality of life in their regions, and whereas the city recognizes it is a vital part of the region's success due to its commitment to a viable economic development program and a strong partnership with other agencies. Now therefore, I, Christian Price, Mayor of the City of Maricopa, do hereby proclaim the week of May 15th through the 19th, 2017 as Economic Development Week in Maricopa, Arizona, and recognize the importance of economic development in creating investment opportunities and improving the quality of life. This is dated the 16th of May, 2017. Let's give Denise and all of her department a big round of applause. Okay, at this time, we'd like to invite our Youth Council graduating seniors recognition. Henry, are you doing that? Are you, you have that? Oh, this is Heather. My apologies. I don't know who I'm pointing to here. All right, come on down, Henry. Heather, give the mic to you. Sure.
I'd like to present I call them mine because I taught for 17 years and these children become my kids too. My graduating seniors this year. This is my third term with Youth Council in the city. Alyssa's been with me. We joined Youth Council together 3 years ago. Girls, will you come up here? I also have Pamela and Joey who joined this year. All active members of Youth Council. I would not have had a successful term without them. I would like to take the time tonight just to recognize their effort and dedication to the city and what a great job they've done this year.
And for those of you who may not know it, during the Senior Recognition and Scholarship Awards last Monday at the PAC, Pamela was responsible for probably 70% of the scholarships that were awarded that night. There were almost $7 million awarded in scholarships, so that gives you an understanding.
At this time, I'd like to invite up Jim Davis, as well as Dr. Ewing and the Student Choice Group, as well as members of our seniors. Anyone who is a senior, please come on up, or certainly Helen. Come on up here. Have a little presentation for them.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, staff, and guests. My name is Jim Davis. I'm the Executive Director of Student Choice High School. And Student Choice High School is an alternative high school that's located in Copper Sky Recreation Center. Copper Sky here in Maricopa is one of our 5 locations, and we have 4 locations in the valley, and we serve about 1,000 students total. And these are students that need an alternative setting from the comprehensive high school, and so we provide a different type of environment for them, and it's a choice environment for them. And we're excited to be a part of Maricopa. And one of our values as an organization is not only to educate children, but to be a part of the community of what's taking place in every community. We love Maricopa. We love what's taking place in Maricopa, and we believe we bring value. But also, why we're here tonight is because we are here to make a contribution and to make a donation to the city of Maricopa for senior services. And so it's just an honor for us to be a part of the community, and we're honored to make this presentation tonight. And we would love you as the community, council members, mayor, staff, for you to stop by Copper Sky and to see what's taking place there every single day. There's about 150 students that we serve in Maricopa, which is very thriving, and our goal is to graduate all 150 of those students in a time frame that is efficient. So thank you for your time, and we'd like to make this donation to the City of Maricopa Senior Services.
And just as we get to this picture here, just to further elaborate on that, as you know, the seniors have been displaced from the Copa Center, and so this is a real help when you look at the fact that one of the things that we are having to do at the school in which they're moving to at Santa Cruz Elementary is we're kind of creating a separate entrance, and there are some costs associated with that. So with these dollars are going to go to fix that and improve that, and then anything that's left over is also going to be donated to senior programming. So just wanted to let you all know that and give them a big round of applause.
Good evening to Dr. Brian Ewing, Principal, and Jim Davis, the Executive Director. On behalf of Creative Sisterhood, and the Copa seniors, we want to thank you for a generous, generous gift, and it is greatly, greatly, greatly appreciated.
And then last but not least, in our program today, as far as our acknowledgments and awards go, we have had a very successful class this year of the Maricopa Citizens Leadership Academy. This is the spring 2017 session. And so, Jennifer, come on up. We want to introduce all of those who have come through this program, have learned about the ins and outs of the city, what it does, what we do right, what we do wrong, and all things about this city. And so I know it's quite an intensive course. I've been through it myself, and they're our future leaders. So we would like to thank them for going through this, and we have a little presentation and a gift for them. Jennifer.
Thank you, Mayor. Honorable Mayor and council members, as the mayor just said, it's my honor to present to you tonight the graduating class, the spring graduating class of our Maricopa Citizen Leadership Academy. And as you know, this really takes our residents and transforms them into actively engaged citizens. So just have a really brief presentation to give you some of the history. This was our 15th session. We've had 256 graduates over the years, and tonight, it says 30 up there, but we actually have 31. So we had some late information get to us. So 31 graduates tonight. So that bumps that other number up to 257. The graduation requirements are fairly intense. We want to make sure they get a really good taste of what we do here. So they need to attend at least 5 of the 6 sessions of the academy, attend a city council meeting or school board meeting, and attend a board, commission, or a committee meeting. And these are some pictures of our last class, the public safety class, which is always one of the favorites. And you can see the fire truck came out. They got to see all the equipment. And then they got to get really intimate with our canines. So that was definitely quite an experience. So really, without further ado, I'd like to invite all of you to come down to shake their hand, give them a certificate and a pin, and we'll introduce each graduate and ask them to come down. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so please just come up when I call your name. First, Melissa Bailey. Next, Rob Boyd. Gloria Crossland. Joe DeAndrea. Pat DeAndrea. Janet Dolan. Tracy Davis. Catherine Ernst. Amanda Evans. James Farabee. Hannon Farabee. Larry Fullerton. Kelly Jarris. Erica Jimenez. Mike Jimenez. Margaret Johnson. Edward Michael. Viola Najar. Crystal Ojan. Cindy Parker. Cynthia Portray. Tom Rain. Alejandro Reyes. Grace Robinson. Elizabeth Scaff. Trisha Starks. Donald Silva. Joy Talabi. Joanne Vidiello. Rich Vidiello. And last but not least, Joanna Vanderpool. So a big congratulations and another round of applause for our graduates. This is the biggest class we've had in a long time. Yep, so we'll try to squeeze everyone in the best we can. Awesome. Congratulations. have it, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's awesome. I love it. Yeah, we've never had that good of a picture. Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. So just to wrap up, I do want to let you know that we'll have a fall session of Leadership Academy starting in September. We'll get those details out fairly soon, and all the information will be on our website. And of course, if you have any information, folks can contact me for how to sign up. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Yeah. We just wanted to acknowledge the fact that many of the graduates from this session of the Citizens Leadership Academy graduated to the extent in which they already perhaps serve on different city boards and commissions and committees. That's something we encourage everybody to take the opportunity to sign up for. We have openings on some of our commissions and committees, and it is something that we're always looking for people to attend. So we can't do this work without you. There's only 7 of us, and you know, while we do as much as we all can up here, the reality is it takes a lot more behind-the-scenes efforts to get things done and ready to be sent to these meetings where we make these official decisions, but we can't do it without you. So we encourage you to participate in that. Thank you again to that class that's graduated, and we look forward to great things from you. At this time, we'll move to the item 4, the report from the mayor. You know, I've been so busy that I haven't had a chance to look at all the things that I've been doing. They've been mentioned earlier, so we'll just go with that. But needless to say, we are continuing to build relationships and proffer things. As you know, we are trying to manage some of the challenges that arise in budget season, as well as with the different road construction projects that you see out and about as we move closer and closer to the construction of the 347 overpass. And so while we have been dealing with many of those topics at hand, we continue to move the city forward with a variety of strategic and economic development angles. And so with that, I'll just kind of leave that, and we'll hit more of that later. So with that, can we move to the report from the city manager, please?
Honorable Mayor and Council, I'd like to invite Chief Stahl up to give you a brief presentation regarding the Police Memorial Week.
Good evening, Mayor Price, Vice Mayor Brown, council members, audience. This week, May 11th through the 17th, is Peace Officer Memorial Week nationwide. As a chief of police, it's very humbling to watch the men and women every single day put themselves between harm and good. So far this year, 50 law enforcement officers, as of walking across the street today, have lost their lives in the line of duty this year, 2017. It reminds us, and should remind us every single day, how dangerous this job is, and how the dangers that are confronted every single moment by these officers out there. As a chief, it's also, I think, as elected officials and as a chief, I think it's important not to forget the family members who also ride in those cars each and every day with their loved ones. They're not there personally, but they are, when they leave at the beginning of the shift and walk out their door, vicariously, they are there with our officers. So when an officer is lost in the line of duty, we adopt their entire family for the rest of our lives. And that is very important in law enforcement line of work. So on behalf of the men and women of the Maricopa Police Department, I want to remember those who have fallen, the heroes who have fallen, on behalf of justice, on behalf of safety, and on behalf of the Constitution of the United States. We in Maricopa and the men and women of the Maricopa Police Department do not take it for granted that we work in a community where we are supported. And we want to thank our elected officials, city manager, and all of our citizens for the support that they give us every single day as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, City Manager. Appreciate it. That'll take us to the call to the public. I have several speaker cards, and we'll go there first. The first request we had to speak tonight was from Lucinda Boyd, so if you'd please come forward. Lucinda, I know that we tried to rearrange a few things, so we apologize, but this is kind of the order we needed to go in, so we wanted to make sure you go first.
That's fine. Thank you, Mayor. My name is Lucinda Boyd, and I've been a resident of Maricopa for 34 years. I'm a registered nurse and the president and co-founder of the Streets Don't Love You Back organization. I want to thank you, Mayor Price, the Maricopa City Council members, Chief Stahl, Judge Riggs, all the community leaders that have become mentors to us. We've come to you for advice, and you've always given us encouragement. Tonight's a very special night, and I'm going to tell you why. Tonight is the first formal public graduation for anything that my husband, Rob Boyd, has done. And tonight he graduated from the Maricopa Leadership Academy, which I know he is very, very excited. Our lives paralleled, but were very different. I grew up in a small, safe town in southern Arizona, while Rob grew up in one of the most dangerous ghettos of Detroit, Michigan. While I had been sexually abused and had to deal with the shame and guilt, Rob watched his father get murdered by his grandfather in front of him. While I was graduating from 8th grade, Rob was gangbanging and drug dealing. He was an angry kid in and out of the juvenile system. While I was graduating from high school, he was making millions of dollars in the streets of Detroit with a drug epidemic. We both had our different life circumstances. I eventually settled down with my family, and Rob eventually went underground after watching most of his friends get killed or go to prison. While I was raising a family, my children, and many others in Maricopa, he was living a very low-key life in another state where nobody knew his past, yet he was still a boss of a crew and selling drugs because that's the only thing he knew how to do. I went back to college after having 4 children because somebody believed enough in me to tell me I could do it. I became a registered nurse and I graduated with honors, while Rob got his GED in the correctional system. Years later, our lives crossed. We became friends. I believed in him, and I encouraged him that he could do something different and do something better. He made the choice to change his life, and because of that, here we are today, educating the youth against the dangers of gangs, drugs, violence, and abuse. When our youth are acting out, be patient. Show them love, encouragement. Let them know that they can do something positive and something different. Sometimes all it takes is for another person to encourage us and let us know that we can do it. Maricopa is a very diverse city, and while some of us grew up in quiet cities and towns, others grew up in the streets known as the jungle. Our goal at the Streets Don't Love You Back is helping our youth learn how to succeed. I graduated from the Maricopa Leadership Academy last year, and tonight I want to publicly congratulate my husband for continuing on the right path, even though it's not always been easy. I'm proud of you. And I thank you all for being our leaders and our mentors as we continue on the journey to help make a difference. If you want to find anything out about our organization, please go to thestreetsdon'tloveyouback.com. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lucinda. The next speaker card I have is for Constance Jackson. Constance, are you here? There we are. Come on up, Constance.
Good evening, Mayor Price and Vice Mayor Brown and council members. As you know, I'm Constance Jackson and I'm president of Pinal County NAACP. I'm here this evening because concern from a parent of a student that attends Legacy Charter School here in Maricopa. Legacy plans on having a Civil War reenactment on the 24th of May. And this I have a concern with. You know, I do realize that history has to be taught, but the reenactment of the Civil War with children is a concern for me. What part are the African American students playing? We know why this war was fought. It was because of slavery, whether to continue owning slaves or to set them free. This is my concern with having children reenacting the Civil War. I did speak with the principal of the Legacy School today, and she explained to me how the children were going to do this reenactment, but I still have concerns. What are they going to do, and how are they going to participate in this? Now, she told me that they're going to read speeches about different battles. I can understand that, but I don't think fifth graders truly can get the full benefit of knowing what the Civil War was truly about, because some adults don't know. And to me, this is about the African American students and how they feel. And her name is Mrs. Sundin. She said she's going to convey our conversation with her supervisors. And I told her, and I mean this with all my heart, that I want to sit down and have that conversation. I know it's a difficult conversation to have about race, but we all need to come to the table and have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Constance. Appreciate it. The next one I have on the list is Theresa Crane. Theresa, come on up.
All right, good evening, Mayor Price and members of the council. Wanted to take this opportunity tonight to introduce and reintroduce myself. My name is Terry Crane, and I am the new/returning CEO of the Maricopa Chamber of Commerce. I'm humbled to have been asked to return to the Chamber, and I'm excited to be back in this great community that I've always called home. Myself, along with Chamber leadership, is looking forward to working with Council and City staff to build strong collaborative relationship between our organizations. I'm eager, able, and happy to help in any capacity or with any projects that work for the greater good of the City of Maricopa, its businesses, and its residents. In closing, please note that I have an open door policy and welcome any suggestions for improvement. Thank you for your time and your commitment to our community.
Thank you, Terry. Appreciate it. The next speaker card I have is for Shelley Gillespie.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, and fellow citizens. I wanted to bring you up to date on what's happening with Copa Shorts Film Fest, and you've all been involved, and I must thank you all immensely for your help. On Friday, we started accepting films for next year's festival, and I'm proud to say that one of the first that came in was from a veteran, and that is one of our new categories. We decided that after Councilmember Woman Gussie said to us, we should have a veterans category. We didn't have to think too hard about that because my husband and I have a son who is a veteran, Marine, and he went through some tough stuff, so he's still trying to get his degree done, and he's been out for a few years. But it's an exciting and gratifying thing, and the film that we got was very soul-searching, so it was exciting. We're going to continue to take films for Native American categories. We've separated the high school and the college films, so they will be separate in 2 different film blocks, and documentaries, lots of comedies, animation, sci-fi. But what's really exciting is the fact that we are, again, partnering with CAC, and we're going to expand the program that we had last year where we gave 1 day of training to the community. Now we're going to have 3, and we'll have one here at Maricopa and 2 other campuses. As soon as we have those confirmed, we'll report that. But we're going to make it possible, and it's free, for anybody in the community to go to those workshops. We're also just on the cusp, just getting organized with Maricopa Public Library, who is going to work with us and partner with us to do a full-year program, one day each month, for middle school and high school students and adults, I guess, if they'd really like to be there. They're going to be fitting in the library room there, and we'll have a whole series of people who are experts at working with film and teaching the students how to start a film and how to get it all the way to getting funded and learning what they need to do to make those films. Lighting, sound, all those things that we really need to help them with. Another thing we're going to do, which is quite innovative, is we have the gentleman who was at our festival and gave a workshop on film scoring, and we are going to do something he won a presidential medal from Michelle Obama for. He did an innovative program where he's teaching students who really don't have much background in music how to do a film score. It's a very lucrative career, and he's going to do it here for us. So we're very excited about that, and we just have to get the funding. So that's what we're looking for, and if any of you can help again, we'd be very grateful. But we're so excited about the new things we're doing and the expansions of the things we've been doing, and everybody seems to be very much excited about getting on board. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for your support and your help. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shelley. Appreciate it. The next speaker card I have on the list is for BJ Smith. BJ, come on up.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. We're here tonight as members of the Maricopa Police Department volunteers to request that we be afforded the opportunity to be included in the privilege of a minimal cost, which is just the taxes, membership of the Copper Sky Multi-Generational Center as afforded to the paid employees of the City of Maricopa. I have already posed this request to Human Resources, who told me that because we didn't receive paychecks, that there was nothing they could do, but that I could take the request further to the police chief and the commanders, who replied that the request had to be made to the City Council, since that was how the previous approval was requested for the city employees. We feel that even though we are not paid employees, but volunteers that freely give our time and skills, that we might be afforded a waiver of the paycheck requirement. We are of the understanding that the city employees are required to pay taxes on the said membership, and we propose that when a volunteer signs up with their volunteer ID badge for a membership, that it be for either 1, 6, or 12-month period, which would also assist any of the snowbirds that might be availing themselves of the program, in which we would be required to pay the taxes for that specific period of time, at that particular time as well, which would thereby minimize the paperwork for the city. We're trying to do this as transparent as we can. For the thousands of hours and dollars that we save the city each year, I feel that this type of perk, if you will, would be a great give back to the volunteers. We thank you for your time and your consideration for this request. If anybody has any questions?
Thank you, BJ. We can't take questions, unfortunately, at this time, but that doesn't mean we don't have them. So that's a very interesting proposal, and I think we'll continue to discuss it as we move through this budgetary season and into future as well. So we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to call Judah Zamont up, please.
Good evening, Mayor Price, Vice Mayor Brown, City Council members, city officials, and neighbors. I'm speaking to you tonight on behalf of Maricopa Arts Council, for which I am one of 4 co-directors. Maricopa Arts Council, or MAC for short, has been holding a 9-month-long all-arts expo, which has been a tremendous local hit, introducing our city to poetry slams, studio crawls, a world music showcase, performing arts gala, and having a bit of a hand in the original movie shorts competition, that's Shelley Gillespie's bailiwick, plus several new gallery spaces. All these specials were in addition to the regular schedule of plays, concerts, and recitals produced by Maricopa's established dance, music, theater, and visual arts organizations, all taking place during the expo year. To finish out the expo in style, MAC is adding one more marquee event early in June, on June 3rd, which is definitely a Maricopa first, a young choreographers showcase. A selection of fledgling choreographers have created new original dances, which will be brought to life before a live audience on the afternoon of June 3rd at the High School Performing Arts Center. They'll be danced by the Onyx Dance Troupe, the resident dance company of Desert Sun Performing Arts. The young choreographers have done wonderful work, speaking of their passion for dance and how that inspires them. And the top 3 choreographers will receive monetary prizes ranging up to $300. These prizes are awarded by MAC. Who will judge this competition? All of us, because the prizes are People's Choice Awards. To make it easy for everyone to participate, tickets for the event are only $5. Please do come down Saturday, June 3rd at 3 p.m. to the Performing Arts Center for a Maricopa first. Before that dance, on the evening of June 1st, and backed by popular demand, is MAC's most radical expo event, the Silent Reading Party. Leave your electronics at home, grab a book, and plan to order some refreshments while you relax in genial company with other readers and have the opportunity to meet an intriguing author mind to mind. The event is free, 6 to 7:30 p.m., Thursday, June 1st, at Honeycutt Coffee. A third early June arts event is equally notable, the opening reception for Craig Durmashkin's colorful new gallery at Maricopa Center for Entrepreneurship. The opening reception is June 7th at 6 p.m., and this event is also free. To conclude, I'll mention this. Last week, Governor Ducey signed Arizona's fiscal year 2018 budget. It includes a one-time $1.5 million appropriation to the Arizona Commission on the Arts. That's our state wellspring, which maintains level funding for the State Arts Commission and strongly signals leadership's understanding of the vital roles Arizona's artists and arts organizations play in their communities as innovators and creative catalysts. Equally, it acknowledges the arts as an economic driver, enhancing the education of our young people and creating opportunities for dialogue and understanding within our state's very diverse communities. Maricopa's hometown talent is at a high level. MAC's Expo demonstrates this. So MAC now invites our city leaders to consider instituting support funds for Maricopa's creative community on a standing basis. These funds will pay immeasurable dividends for our city now and into the future. They are needed and they are amply justified. Thank you for the support you have given all throughout this Expo year to the many talented people who call Maricopa home. May it continue. Thank you.
Thank you, Judith. Appreciate it. Perfect. That concludes the speaker cards I had for this particular item on the agenda, the call to the public, but we'd like to open it up to anybody else in the audience who'd like to approach the podium and tell us what's on your mind. Yeah, go ahead, Councilmember.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, fellow council members. I just wanted to say thank you to the city of Maricopa. I don't know if many of you know, and many of you probably do know, this week we had the representatives from the state of Arizona Commission on African American Affairs. And they held a town hall meeting last Thursday night at Copper Sky. From all reports from the commission, Maricopa was exactly the model of a city that they wanted to visit and participate in. The reason is because the citizens of Maricopa came out and participated. They gave their opinions, they asked questions, they gave information, and it was a wonderful activity. And prior to the town hall, they actually held their executive session here at the executive conference room. They were very impressed, to the point of even perhaps reaching out to the governor and asking him to come and visit the city of Maricopa as well to see what we're doing here. So I just wanted to say thank you to all that attended, and I think we're going to see more activities such as this. The Cultural Affairs Advisory Commission is up and running, and it's going to be headed by Ms. Joanna Vanderpool as the chair. So I think you're going to see a lot of things that are happening as a result of where we are as a city on a cultural level. So just wanted to say thank you very much for all of you that attend. Let's keep up the good work. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else at this time? Seeing no one, we'll go ahead and close the call to the public and move on to item 7, which is the meeting minutes. We have council items 7.1 and 7.2 available for a motion, please.
Move to approve.
Have a motion. Is there a second? Second. Motion and a second. Any further discussion on the meeting minutes of 7.1 and 7.2? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Those motion carry. That motion carries, and that takes us on to public hearings. We have no public hearings at this time, and that'll take us to the consent agenda. This is for items 9.1 through 9.6. 9.7 has been pulled from the consent. It will be the first item we tackle in the regular city council agenda. Can I have a motion, please, council?
So move.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion on consent agenda items at this time? Yes, Councilmember Smith.
I was under the impression that a previous request to pull item
Oh, 9.7.
9.7, did you mention that?
Uh-huh.
Okay, I must have been thinking about something else. Thank you.
No worries. 9.7 is the first item on the regular city council agenda at this time. So we have a motion, a second. Any further discussion on these items? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. That'll take us to...
Mr. Mayor, if we can just pull 9.6, I think we need, I missed that during the work session. I think council needs to specifically waive the bidding procedures, because this was something, because the ADOT got 3 bids on it, and we're using the 3 bids ADOT got, but the city didn't specifically get those bids. And so if we can just waive the bidding process and re-vote on 9.6, I'd appreciate it.
So let's go back and just redo this. Let's go back and redo the consent agenda from items 9.1 through 9.5, and then we will attack 9.6 and 9.7 separately. So council, if it's amenable to you all based on legal counsel, can we have a motion to approve 9.1 through 9.5, please?
I move it. We already had a motion on the floor, Mayor, from Vice Mayor Brown.
Right, so to amend it? Okay, my apologies, yes. Would you amend your motion?
I will accept the amendment.
My apologies, in second. So again, the amended motion is from 9.1 to 9.5, and so with that, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries. So that'll take us to item 9.6. Based on the discussion we just had here, and any further discussion that needs to be had on that? Council, is there a motion on 9.6 separately, please?
Mayor, I move to waive the procurement process for this item.
So that, and accept it as ADOT has done it, correct?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, it's actually in the staff report and goes through everything.
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. So that'll take us to item 9.7. The mayor and city council shall consider the 10-year City of Maricopa Economic Development Strategic Plan for acceptance. This is for discussion and action, and I'll turn it over to you, Councilwoman Chapados, who had asked for it to be pulled.
Yes, Mayor, and it's my intent to actually move to table this item. I think we've received the preliminary report. We've had a special meeting on it to discuss from the vendor's perspective some recommendations for council. I'd like to give our Economic Development Director and Department time to vet this and maybe come up with an implementation plan and perhaps some more dialogue with council before we actually take action on it. Tonight, we would only be accepting a document that we've technically already accepted, so I really don't see the need to take formal action at this point. I'd rather have it come back more complete. Denise, anything you want to add to that?
Well, thank you, Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, Councilwoman Chapados. You know, the Economic Development Strategic Plan was a 10-year plan, and there was no specific, items that must occur first before the others. It really is all items must occur in order for it to be effective. Realistically, as a city, we need to think about all the departments and the impact that a plan like this has. So my intention is to build an implementation schedule for us so that we have a better understanding of what we can do within the next year as well as the next 10 years.
And just so I'm clear that we already currently have an ED strat plan, it's just this was taking it to the next level, correct?
Right, Councilwoman Chapados, our strategic plan was to enhance our efforts. So the current strategic plan was really to lay down the foundation, to market, to create the department. So those measures and initiatives won't necessarily go away.
Yes, Councilmember Smith.
Yes, I had been communicating with City Manager Rose on this because if you align this with the budget item as well, I was trying to determine what was the right thing to do in the right order, and I understand we have some legislative things that require us to look at the budget tonight, but I was worried about getting the cart before the horse. As an example, we did have a review. We sat through a detailed workshop on this, but we haven't, as a council, actually talked about, do we all agree that everything that's in there needs to stay in there, or do we agree that some things need to be taken out? And I feel uncomfortable accepting a document and giving the public the impression that, yes, we're running with this without a conversation on, do we agree that it all needs to be in there? And so with that, I would like to table it as well so that council, I feel like the cart before the horse is that council should have that direction to give to you, Denise, so that you don't run with something that we're not even comfortable with and then come back and then we have to churn on that some more. I feel like the direction needs to come from us first. Yes, we all are comfortable with everything, and then take it away.
I couldn't agree with you anymore. This really is the vision for the entire city, so I ultimately leave that up to you.
So let me play devil's advocate for a moment. So maybe we're arguing semantics here, and I don't want to belabor the point too much, but while I want to side with my colleagues in this, one of the problems that we often have is that if we don't take formal action on things, then it sits on a shelf and it doesn't become what we want it to become. While I understand acceptance versus adoption, and you're right, I don't want to confuse the public. I do want this to have the full force and measure of the fact that we spent the taxpayers' money on it, we spent time on it, we've gone through this in depth, and we have a lot more to go through as it is a 10-year plan. And I do think that as per the work session the other night, we talked about creating a Gantt chart in which you start with the low-hanging fruit and you go through and you look at all these things simultaneously, and some will run further and longer, some will be accomplished in 3 months, and everything in between. So while we're not adopting everything in that plan, and that's what council still needs to discuss, I would like to see that we accept it from the standpoint that we did do it, pay for it, move through this process, and then we can hash out the details and differences, because we are not adopting it as a complete whole because we haven't gone through it more than the preliminary. But the acceptance of it simply says this is what we have paid for, gotten, reviewed, and at the end of the day are going to move forward with through additional and continued breakdowns of that. And I think that, again, I don't really want to get bogged down in semantics, but I really think that acceptance by the council to say, yes, we've done this, yes, we want to keep going through it, yes, we want to keep dealing with it through the budgetary processes, gives that full force behind it that without, I'm afraid we just don't truly have. Now, again, that's not to say that any of us are going to let it die, but again, I think that at the end of the day, it gives it that oomph that we don't have without. So that was my whole beef on you know, whether we table it or not, is acceptance versus adoption. But again, I can be persuaded based on the comments of council and where they'd like to go. Councilwoman Gussie.
It was my impression at the meeting that we had with Ms. Morphesis wanted closure, and that was the reason why we brought this to council today. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, I think that she would like to see it adopted, and I think that that's where we're headed with it. But just like Councilmember Smith said, I don't think we've had the time to dissect it and go through it. What we had was a high-level overview. But I think you're absolutely right. That's why it is under acceptance at this point versus adoption, because there is no feasible way that I think we can look at all those recommendations there and say, if we adopt it, then we have to start allocating every resource we have to every aspect of it, and there's no way we can do that at this time. But by acceptance, it allows us to say we're saying that the plan was done, we've gone through it, we've looked at it, but we have a lot more review still left to do before we ever get to an adoption portion where we're saying these 5 out of 10 recommendations we're going to run with and put resources behind.
I think out of respect to Ms. Morphesis, who did all the work that went along with it, and the fact that we did actually pay for it, we do have to accept it. We're not going to accept it as is. We are going to, you know, if we can imagine this being a dress that we just bought, we're going to have a couple alternations. Let's say a business suit. We're going to have some alterations, and we're going to have some changes to do, but at the same time, she provided us with what we requested. We paid for what we requested. It is my thought behind putting this item on today's agenda is to go ahead and accept it as the document that she gave us. Whether we adopt it or not, that wasn't the point. It was just to accept it.
Thank you. Yes, Councilman Chapados.
Denise, do you have a projected timetable as to when an implementation or Gantt chart might be available? 3 months, 6 months?
Well, you know, one of the things that we do for the department is we do a retreat for the department, and we will look at our initiatives, our priorities, and we'll do that for the entire year. So prior to that, I would sit down and really outline and sort of dissect the plan to see what we can do. So I would say within the next 45 days, that would be something that I could feasibly do.
So well within 2 months' time. Mm-hmm. I really don't see the harm in waiting to accept it at that point and actually to take it to the next level to adopt it. So I would move to approve with the caveat that the Economic Development Director will return with an implementation plan and outline and recommendations within 60 days.
Thank you. Before we move to that motion, we have additional comments. So, Councilmember Smith.
I really am echoing what Councilmember Chapados indicated. I don't think that there's a rush, and I was trying to decide if there was any other document that we've had that we accepted. I know it's probably just semantics. We've received this, but do I accept it in its full? I'm not certain. I'm not certain that the 6 of you accept it in its full. And so I'm very uncomfortable with using that word accept, and I do agree that I think we still should consider tabling it. And I think that for the benefit of staff, we have to tell them what parts of it do we accept, and so that they don't come back with an implementation timeline that includes everything if we don't agree with everything.
Councilor Wade?
I'm just curious, does it have any impact on whether or not the organization that provided the study is going to be paid or not? No. Then I don't see any problem in delaying the process for 60 days so we can go through it.
Okay. Other council members? Yes, Councilmember Manfredi.
Denise, your suggestion, do we delay it or not? I was just curious. Do you need it delayed for you to come up with your plan?
Councilmember Manfredi, I certainly need some time to dissect the strategic plan and build an implementation plan. And really, this isn't something that I would do by myself. As you know, there were 7 different action items. A series of them aligned with our capital improvement projects. So I would really sit down with Gregory, and other departments to really identify what is realistic and fair for us to implement given our current staffing. So I certainly need time, for sure.
With that in mind, I'm okay with tabling it also.
Okay. Anyone else this time? So With that, I guess we have two competing motions of sorts. I mean, if there's a desire still to table it, or with a desire to go along with what Councilmember Chapados was discussing as far as a two-month time frame for additional implementation and discussion. Clearly, the council would also want to probably be involved in that, as we would have some sort of a mini retreat in that respect to go over these things and talk about what would really lead to adoption of a Gantt chart of an implementation plan. So, council, how would you like to run? Do we want to delay in the way of table, or do you want to go along with the proposal? So, kind of turn that over to you.
Mayor, I think point of order, I made a motion, but I didn't hear a second, so I think we have to resolve that.
I didn't accept the motion yet, so that's why I've turned it back over into the council to decide which way you'd like to go. So if you want to, I will give you the point of personal privilege in the fact that you were the one that pulled it. So if you would like to table it, please make that motion. If you would like to go off the secondary motion that you were proposing, I'll give you first right of refusal on either.
Okay, I'll just restate the motion. I would move to table this with the provision that the Economic Development Director garner the input and feedback necessary and come back within 60 days with an implementation plan.
So we have a motion to table with an implementation plan within 2 months, and there is a second. Councilmember Smith.
Councilmember Chapados, does that include interaction between Denise and city council members? Thank you.
Whatever feedback necessary.
Okay, thank you.
So essentially some sort of a additional retreat in there to
There
discuss.
would have to be
Yeah,
some type of
absolutely.
coming together.
Right. There would have to be
assist her.
to have all 7 of us back together. So that's the motion on the table. Any further discussion? Okay, with that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. At this time, we'd like to move to item 10.1. The mayor and council shall discuss and possibly take action to approve the 2017 to 2019 Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, with the Maricopa Officers Council, Fraternal Order of Police of Maricopa, Lodge 78. This is for discussion and action. Kathleen.
Mayor and council, the City of Maricopa management team met with the Fraternal Order of Police Officers Council beginning in January through May to negotiate a new 2-year agreement. The discussions were thorough and professional, and we are here today to recommend adoption of the Memorandum of Understanding that the parties have tentatively agreed to and the union members have ratified.
Great, thank you very much. Council, would you like to have any questions, concerns answered on this at this time? With that, can I have a motion?
Support.
Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this item? If not, we'd like to move to a roll call, please.
Councilwoman Gussie?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Chapados?
Yes.
Councilmember Wade?
Yes.
Councilmember Manfredi?
Yes.
Mayor Price?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Congratulations. The motion passes unanimously. That'll take us to item 10.2, MOU 17-04. The Mayor and City Council shall discuss and possibly take action to approve the 2017 to 2019 Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, with the Maricopa Sergeants Council, Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge 78. This is for discussion and action. Kathleen.
The City of Maricopa management team also met with the Fraternal Order of Police Sergeants Council once a week, beginning in January through May, to negotiate a new 2-year agreement. The discussions were thorough and professional, and we are here today to recommend adoption of the Memorandum of Understanding that the parties have tentatively agreed to and the union members have ratified.
Thank you again. Council, any questions or concerns regarding this item? Seeing none, can I have a motion, please?
Move to adopt, Mr. Mayor.
Have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, we'll move to roll call.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Wade?
Yes.
Councilmember Chapados?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Manfredi?
Yes.
Councilwoman Gussie?
Yes.
Mayor Price?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Great. Thank you very much. Again, congratulations. Are we doing a signing ceremony now? So if you all would please come up. Council, if you'd like to come down as well.
Huh?
Okay, thank you very much, and congratulate our officers and the adoption of that MOU. That'll take us to item 10.3. The Mayor and City Council shall consider a proposal from Maricopa Seniors, Inc. to partner with the city at game night at Copper Sky for bingo. This is for discussion and action. Councilwoman Chapados.
Mr. Mayor, I just want to let the council know that as president of Maricopa Seniors, I do intend to participate in the discussions, but I will be recusing myself from any vote.
Okay. With that, where are we at? Christy, take it away.
All right, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, this item before you is a proposal that we received by Maricopa Seniors, Inc., and they are interested in partnering with the age-friendly game night and hosting bingo at Copper Sky in conjunction with that program. They did present their proposal to the age-friendly committee on March 20th and got the thumbs up from them. So I know I'll turn it over to Councilmember Chapados if you have any other questions for me to kind of talk a little bit more about the program and what the Maricopa Seniors would like to do.
Great, thank you.
Council, any questions?
That was easy. Yes, Councilmember Gussie.
My Mother's Day, they used to exchange money. Does this exchange money?
It's for cash, yeah.
Okay,
There's a
and-
cash admission, and then we do cash prizes based on attendance.
And does all the money that comes in goes out as a prize, or do you all get to
No,
reap
it's a
some of the-
50-50 split, and you actually have a handout as part of your council packet that shows you how we compute our cash jackpots. So it is based on attendance. 50% we distribute for prize money, and then 50% goes back into Maricopa Seniors, and it funds our lockbox program and our pendant program, so we're able to provide those free of charge to those seniors or adults who cannot otherwise afford them.
And how many do you plan on hosting in one event? You know, is it
Well,
50? If there's 100 there, you'll give bingo cards to 100, or is there a limit?
There'll be a limit based on, we're looking to do this 4 times a year in Activity Room B in conjunction with game night. So whatever the seating capacity is there, it's about 50 people tops. And we have to comply with Arizona Department of Revenue laws, so we can't even allow anyone under the age of 18 in the room.
Or while the game is going on?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Vice Mayor.
Can you tell me, well, I'll start with this. I know when it first began some years ago now at the villages, can you describe to us how successful you've been in terms of participation?
We originally came before City Council back in 2010. We needed the endorsement of a government body to apply for the license. We did receive a gaming license. We've had it since 2010. Our success rate varies based on sometimes season. We've seen over the years that it really doesn't pay to do games in July and August because a lot of people are away. We also don't do any games in December because of all the holidays. We piggyback right after Thanksgiving holiday, and then by December, a lot of folks are concentrating on Christmas and New Year's. So I did a quick 3-year analysis. We average, in the last 3 years, we average about $55 a month in profit, and we only do them the first Monday and first Thursday of every month, and which is the exact same schedule we're thinking of doing here, only 4 times a year, January, February, September, and October.
What kind of attendance do you realize?
It varies. The room at the Villages, the seating capacity is about 45. We've ranged from 45 down to, we've done it for as few as 6 people.
Councilmember, this was also then basically requested by by members that participate currently in the game nights that are held at Copper Sky, correct?
Yes, we offered it as a activity. We didn't charge anything. The city was kind enough to reimburse us for the daubers that the bingo players needed, but otherwise it was totally free. It was met with success, and people started asking us, are we going to do this on a regular basis? So that prompted me to consult with my Maricopa Seniors Board and then bring the proposal forth to Christie and the Age Friendly Committee, and now to you.
Okay. Other questions? Yes, let's go. Councilmember Smith, Councilmember Wade.
I am the liaison on the Age Friendly along with Peg, and I want to support the direction that they chose, but I'm having challenge considering gaming in our city facilities. And so that's a huge concern of mine, and most likely will lead me to vote no, because I feel like it starts a possible potential request to use it for additional type gaming in the future. So I just wanted to verbalize that I support my age-friendly group, but in this particular occasion, I can't support gaming in the city facility.
And I totally understand that. That was a concern that council originally voiced when we came before them for the endorsement for the license. And because it is considered recreational gaming, you're right, it is still a form of gaming. And because of the way that we've structured it with our license, we are also limited by state statute in how much profit that we can generate in a year. We're not even close to getting towards the maximum, but I do understand your concerns. I appreciate that.
Yes, Councilmember Chapados, it's not particularly the, let's see, your Maricopa Seniors. It's not that group, because I do know that you operate on a very conservative approach, and the amount of money that you bring in is very limited. It's not thousands or millions of dollars, but I'm concerned about the spiraling. Thank you.
Councilor Wade.
Well, that's pretty interesting. That was kind of leading into my question, and that there doesn't seem to be a lot of profit being made here, so it seems that it's just for fun more than anything, fun and fellowship and getting together. So I would think that I would hope that if we have to deal with this issue with another organization, that we would have the ability to be able to put limitations on the organization so that it doesn't get out of hand. I mean, I understand where you're coming from as far as the gaming is concerned and how it could turn into something off-track betting and all kinds of stuff, you know. But in this particular case, it seems like it's just a matter of getting together and having fun with each other and sharing with each other. And then I think eventually we would be able to rein in anything else. So I support your activity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would definitely concur with that. I mean, I agree. It's very easy to say gaming as a broad term, but at the end of the day, you know, this is really the only group in Maricopa that has a license by the state to do it. So it's allowing a partnership that is based on fun, you know, and I know you can take that broadly too, but the reality is that this is a social event based on an extension of what we were already hosting there through the Age Friendly Committee and those types of things. And I would concur with Councilmember Wade that, and Councilmember Smith, I don't want this to be a slippery slope into a lot of other things, but I think that the parameters that are being set here is that literally this is a bingo game that, you know, has a $5 entry fee or whatever, and you know, again, this is being held not by the city, but by a private entity that is partnering with the city. And so, again, I think that shows those parameters, and I like that. I like that differential, so to speak. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want the city to be able to try and get, nor probably could they, get some sort of additional license and do it ourselves and all those other things. So, I mean, there are a bunch of hoops to jump through when it comes to gaming, and, you know, I applaud and appreciate that, but I also appreciate that, you know, again, as a single organization, you're the only one in the city with it, and I think that's a good thing, so.
The other thing too, thank you, Mayor, when I was talking with, I've met with both Christy Reister and with Dennis Fitzgibbons, because we proposed this as part of game night, the original conversation said, well, game night is free, so if we allowed you to do bingo, that would be free. And I said, I'm really not comfortable with that. We pay something for the villages. I would like to propose that we pay the same fees to the city that we currently have at the villages, so it would be the exact same pay structure. And then any reporting that we do for Arizona Department of Revenue, we'd be more than happy to share with the city, and anything else that you wanted to know.
Perfect. Okay, any other questions?
Well, it's probably beneficial that you didn't realize too much revenue because if you do, the state's going to sweep it.
That's it. You're right. Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Councilmember
we've been able to
Frederick.
stay under their radar so far.
I'd like to make a motion to approve 10.3.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, so it passes 5-1. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, council.
And that takes us to item 10.4. The mayor and city council shall discuss and possibly take action on adopting a tentative budget for fiscal year 2017-2018 or fiscal year 17-18 and the 5-year capital improvement plan. This is for discussion and action. Get comfortable, right?
This might be a long one.
It's going to be a long one. No, it's going to be fun.
I appreciate the opportunity to present both an overview of the capital improvement program and the annual operating budget for 2017 and 2018.
And Gregory, let me interrupt you, just by way of info also. I do have 2 speaker cards as it pertains to this particular budget item. It is for item 10.4. So I guess, if you don't mind, let me call up the 2 speakers because it'll probably go a little quicker than what we have in the budget. So with that, Carol Makovac, if you want to come up. Did she leave? Carol's gone. And then Rachel, are you still here? Rachel, come on up. And let me just read comments that Carol had. Seniors in Maricopa heavily rely on the Comet Transportation Bus. As I understand, the latest is that they create almost full capacity. If they are doing such a great job, why pull their funding? So that's one comment. And then we also have support from Thomas Rain and Andy Lockridge for the proposal under 10.4, but they did not want to speak at this time. So I just wanted to convey that and read it into the record. Rachel.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, City Council, staff. I'm speaking today this evening on behalf of some seniors who have reported that they are definitely in support of maintaining the Comet service. It is something that is not just appreciated, but it's needed because we do have seniors in the city who are unable to drive and they don't have family here, so they rely on the Comet service. And more so on the, not just the local service that's provided, but is it the direct response or the service that...
Demand response.
Demand response that allows them to go outside of the city to Chandler and to Casa Grande. And at a meeting a few weeks back, there was a comment made that because they utilize that service to go to shop and spend dollars outside of Maricopa, that there was some concern about providing that service. And the comments back regarding that were, it's not just the shopping that's being done. They have to go to doctor's appointments that are in Casa Grande as well as in Chandler. And on those occasions when they do frequent, like the Chandler Mall or the shopping that's within that 5-mile radius that's provided in the Comet service, it's because the services those retail services are not available in the city. So it's not that they're taking advantage of a service, a city-provided service to kind of do, spend money outside of Maricopa. It's because we don't have those shopping privileges in the city. So another issue was that the scheduling, the route efficiency, and because the Comet services is operated by an entity outside of the city, the familiarity with how the city structure the streets and all of that. So as far as, the route pickup and then circling back around to pick someone up who lives right around the corner, because I guess they're not familiar with the streets and such, it's kind of time consuming. And so if someone is to board the shuttle at say 9:30 and then they swoop back around to pick people up, and I'm going to use the example of someone who lives in Homestead, and if they get picked up and then they go to Rancho to pick someone else up, and then maybe Glenwild to pick someone else, and they circle back to Homestead to pick up someone else, and the concern is, why can't all the people who are in Homestead be picked up? And this is for the demand response when they're traveling outside of the city, not when it's the local, because it's usually a scheduling issue. But for that particular service, it starts around 8 or 8:30, and then they leave out to go to Casa Grande or Chandler at around 10. So better scheduling as far as picking them up in groups as opposed to kind of circling the city and doubling back would make more sense per the commenters. But just definitely wanting to convey that this is a service that is needed, and for those that couldn't come tonight, just speaking on their behalf to say, please don't end the service. Don't stop the ability for them to go from Maricopa to Casa Grande or Chandler, because it is something that is definitely helpful, and because they are not able to drive and they do not have anyone to drive them, it's a service that's really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate it. City Manager Rose. City Manager Rose, sorry.
Honorable Mayor, council members. The proposed budgets have been drafted based upon the council priorities that you established as a part of the Vision 2040 plan. If you recall, this will be the first time that we will have used this process where we have worked extensively with the BFO on both the capital improvement plan as well as the operating budgets. And we did not have a retreat with the entire council. Council delegated that authority to the BFO, saying that we can simply do an overview of both documents with you. So that's what you will receive tonight. I want to just highlight what the annual operating budget achieves. First, the secondary property tax rate will be reduced from $1.69 to $1.40. That's consistent with the debt service payments. So as those continues to reduce, you will continue to see that rate drop. The primary property tax rate will remain the same at 4.78. It increases funding for the court. This is the first time we are separating out the court. You will see as we get into the department highlights where we're identifying funding for additional staffing as well as equipment that's needed. It budgets an average salary increase at 4%. There will be some higher, there will be some lower, but we think that this is a good number and the number that we have used in the past. It adds positions in fire, police, finance, and IT. There are some part-time positions that will be added in the library, but those we will talk a little bit about later. It focuses, the capital improvement program focuses very heavily on replacement of outdated equipment, so as well as the improvements of streets and street maintenance. And this budget also funds the design of the fire station. If you recall, we've separated this project into 2 years, the first year being the design, the second year being the funding for the construction. I'd want to just highlight for you the capital improvement program, starting out with really what is a capital improvement program. And the purpose for it is really to establish a plan for a 5-year period that identifies major capital improvements and major costs associated with that, so that we can coordinate between staffs as well as coordinate between agencies when we are doing things like street cuts, so that they will have the ability to know when those things are occurring so that they can plan appropriately as well. So we are certainly hopeful that agencies such as ED3, our cable company, our gas company will look at these documents and plan accordingly so that we don't have as many street cuts as what we will have in the past. As well as it gives you an idea of the capital that will be needed within the city over a 5-year period. One of the things that we'll highlight in police, for example, is the need for the replacement of police vehicles. Can't be on the way to an emergency and break down. Also, trying to do a more responsible action as it relates to the replacement of fire trucks and those things that are very expensive. So trying to do a better job in planning for those. The CIP has multiple funding components to it. The general government CIP It will total $3,832,500. Of that $3,832,500, about $3,632,500 comes from general fund. So that is a large portion of our CIP. The other portion certainly is transportation impact fees, county road tax, and grants. This next slide simply shows you the distribution of those resources. Certainly it is heavily dominated by public works, road improvements. This shows you a pie chart that breaks down. It reflects public works receives about 74.9% of the revenues that are allocated to the capital improvement program. I want to provide you with an overview of the annual operating budget. If you recall, if it is approved, the first year of the capital improvement program goes into the annual operating budget, and then that becomes the capital budget for the fiscal year. Total general fund allocation is $38,630,324. This does not reflect all of the transfers that are associated with it. It's simply the departmental purchases. Then you'll see HERF funds, Copper Sky. We have identified funding capacity for grants that we hope to receive. And the last item is debt service, and this is the actual amount that we're paying on both principal and interest. Here shows you the general fund with all of the transfers that are included as a part of the expenditure allocation. You'll see where the difference is around $5 million, and I'll explain that difference a little later. General fund represents the largest fund within the operating budgets, and it funds the majority of all of our services. So it's the largest budget that we deal with. Just a brief breakdown of the revenue sources. It identifies the primary property tax, local sales tax, state income tax, state sales tax, vehicle license, and then there's a host of other fees and licenses and permits that we receive. But we are anticipating the total amount of revenue that we will receive next fiscal year for general fund being $38,630,324. This next slide provides you with a breakdown of the expenditures. Again, this one does not reflect the transfers. This pie chart identifies for you the percentage that each of the respective departments receive. Certainly, police and fire receive the lion's share of general fund. If you total those and include the city magistrate, it is around 60% of the general fund budget. This next slide provides you what we anticipate being the ending fund balance. So after all of those revenues have been collected, after all of the expenditures have occurred, including all of the transfers out, we anticipate starting the next fiscal year with around $27 million, and we anticipate ending the year with about $22 million. Now, much of that is due to the investment that is being recommended in capital equipment. So the pumper truck, the design for the fire station, the replacement of police vehicles, all of those things are simply investments in capital. Just a quick review of the other funds and the operating budget. For HERF, we anticipate about a little over $3.5 million coming in. If you include both the operating cost as well as what we're proposing in the CIP, we believe we'll end next fiscal year with about $800,000 as a balance. Now that simply will be added to the existing fund balance that we have. That will be important to remember, because I'm going to talk about a different issue that's related to HERF, and that's an issue with the grade separation project. The Copper Sky Fund, over the past 3 years, we have built up a fund balance in Copper Sky to the tune of about $1.5 million. We're recommending deficit spending here. The budget will still be balanced because it does have a relatively healthy fund balance to pull from. That will also be important to remember because of when we get to the section that talks about on the horizon. I want to review for you some of the department highlights. The economic development, if their budget will total a little over $647,000. A portion of that, we have identified funding for the execution of the strategic plan. Tonight, you've asked the Economic Development Director, Denise Earhart, to bring back to you the beginning of that plan, but the entire implementation process will take significantly more time. Information technology, we're proposing to add a position here for desktop support. Also, data network equipment refresh. That's a fancy way of saying we're trying to fight against the hackers. For the city clerk, it primarily maintains the existing level of services. We are doing some computer replacement. For the city council, there are a number of, it primarily maintains the existing level of services. This just simply highlights some of the memberships that you have currently. The city manager's office, we're proposing to add closed captioning for our various meetings, continue with the age-friendly coordinator, and also invest into website redesign. For the city magistrate, we talked about the need in the past of having additional staffing in that area. This allocation would allow for that to occur, as well as for the judge to purchase equipment. Now, there is still a process that he will need to go through in order to do that. That's consistent with our purchasing, and I believe that the judge has agreed to comply with our current processes. City Attorney's Office, we're proposing to leave that line item as is and maintains the existing level of service. Human Resources, the same for that. A bit of an increase, but only related to the annual salary increase. Primarily, it's maintaining the existing level of services that we have there. Up under police, we're adding one dispatch position. Excuse me. We're adding one lieutenant position. We're replacing police vehicles. We're also intending to upgrade the body-worn cameras. Ballistic protection of existing units is needed. Also, crime prevention technology. Up under fire, we're adding an administrative services position, replacing the fire engine, car and light truck replacement, end-user radios and communication equipment. We're also adding 2 captain-level positions there. For development services, a new Comet, 21-passenger bus, some vehicles being replaced. We're proposing to add 2 inspector positions. One of those positions will be the full year. The other position will be a 6-month position that will only be hired if development would dictate the need to do so. It identifies some funding for code enforcement, abatement, The intention is to beef up our program where we can actually go out and abate those violations if need be and lien the property in order to get our funds back. It provides funding for a transit study grant, the matching funding. It also provides a small amount of money for the expansion of common services. If you recall, and we'll talk a little bit about this in a few minutes, the request that came from Development Services for the expansion was approximately $43,000. I think the BFO was recommending about $18,000. We were asked to go back, see what they could do for that, and Martin is still exploring that. Up under Community Services, funding is proposed for Copper Sky exercise equipment, the Copper Sky atrium window shades, the library drive-through book return. The members of the BFO have asked that that item be brought back to them. They've recommended the funding, but they do want to take a look at what is being proposed. Library replacement of carpeting, Copper Sky sales team is being proposed. That would hopefully boost memberships. The intention there is to bring on 2 people right away. The 3rd person would be frozen and would be only hired if the activity indicated a need to do so. Up under Public Works, it identifies several streets that are proposed for improvement next fiscal year. It also identifies they will have responsibility for the fire department administrative building design. So that will be a Public Works project working collaboratively with the fire department. Up under non-departmental, we're proposing a contingency fund of $2.8 million. $1.8 million will go towards PSPRS, which is a refund to employees, public safety employees that were on board, I believe around 2011 to date, that paid into that system that a court case later said that they paid in the wrong amount. There were a little over $77 million that were requested in CIP projects. Almost $49 million were recommended. For CERS from the departments, it was almost $9 million, and roughly $2.5 million are being recommended. I want to review the BFO recommendations since that was an integral part of our process this year. The BFO recommended a decrease for Copper Sky exercise equipment of $15,000. They wanted to fund the atrium window shades, so we moved that forward with $15,000. Again, they asked that we bring back to them the drive-through book return for the design and focus more on a bare bones approach versus what was being identified at the time. They asked to delete funding for community services, parks, and libraries master plan study of $200,000. Delete the Comet funds, $25,000. That resulted in the remaining $18,000, and to freeze the 1 position for the Copper Sky sales team. Again, there are 3 that are being proposed. 1 will be frozen. They recommended adding the fire administrative position, increase wipes. May not be that important to you, but I like them. Also, they recommended funding some of the items that we would have liked to move forward this year out of contingency for the fire, the Phase 2 kitchen, a subscription, a contract worker for the human resources, and a PET scanner. Unfortunately, some of these, because of the time constraints that are associated with it, we won't be able to move forward with. contingency funding because the projects I've learned would actually have to be completed prior to the end of the fiscal year. That impacts the kitchen, and we have talked with the various department directors that are involved in that, and they, as I understand it, are on board. We may come back as a part of next fiscal year's contingency request, and ask for funding at that time. The PET scanner, as I understand it, will be purchased this fiscal year, but all others will be requesting funding out of contingency for next fiscal year.
So Gregory, can I ask a question there then? While that makes sense to me, I had forgotten that when we were in the BFO about completing that before the end of the fiscal year. In theory, the proposal to the council here by the BFO was that based on some of these needs, because these were all items that, this in the last screen that you saw, I mean, we spent, this was on this day, 13, 14 hours going through all this stuff.
It's a long day.
It was a very long day, straight through. And, when we got to these items, we really felt that there was strong need to identify the uses and the completion of these and to have them. So, I mean, in theory, because we're not spending them this year, right? I mean, and you can ask for them out of next year. Can you technically roll those dollars into next year's contingency funding? I mean, so, and I hate to say 2.8 because it sounds like a lot, but it's because of that 1.8, let's just carve that out for a second. So we keep a flat 1 million. Can you say that you add the administrative position, the kitchen, the subscription, and the contract worker, and say that all gets added on, so it's really not 1 million flat, but 1 million, I'm not doing the math in my head, 50,000? Can you say that so that and maybe this is just me, but it feels like it's being spent then in this year versus in next year? Because when we talk about next year, talking about the 1 million that we would reduce based on certain expenditures. Now, we did a very good job this year in controlling that, and that's a good thing. But again, the idea is that once you start spending down that 1 million, you don't know what things may pop up, right? And so my thought is I don't think anybody wants to then again wait till the next BFO and have the same problem. And so at some point we have to say we're going to move forward with that. So I guess I'm just trying to get your thoughts on what it means to just increase that by this amount, and then that way it can take place as of July 1, and it's as though it were spent in this fiscal year. It's more of an accounting gimmick than anything else, but that's how you have to deal with the budgetary line items as per the state of Arizona's law. So I was just wanting your thoughts.
Honorable Mayor, we could certainly increase contingency funding to certainly simply to the level that's identified here for the various projects, and then come back with a request the same way we would have to do this year out of contingency funding. So I believe that they total to $40,000. So we would increase contingency funding to $2.840,000.
Right. So does anyone? I don't know. I mean, we haven't gotten to asking that question yet, but I mean, I was just trying to put that out there as that was what we were trying to intend in the end of this year from our well-managed contingency funding, but how that would look into obviously the approaching time deadlines. So that's
the
all.
Financial impact would be the same.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So okay. Jim Wipes.
There are several items that we are proposing that needs discussion. Many of these occurred after the BFO meeting. We identified, I think, as a part of the BFO discussion, the $58,750,000 for custodial. That has been incorporated into the budget. The $1.8 million for PSPRS has also been incorporated as a part of the contingency funding. Items that still need to be discussed are whether there is a desire to have seed money for Cultural Affairs Committee and the Veterans Committee. We identified that we had left off water credit funding. We have a contract, so we need to make those purchases. That is coming out of the Copper Sky Fund of $191,500. That's also already been incorporated. Another item to discuss is whether you want to establish a resolution that would allow you to, on a yearly basis, determine whether you would make a transfer from HERF funds to the general fund to cover those costs, to cover that $6 million that general fund allocated towards the grade separation project. So that's another item for discussion. It would take at least 12 million, let's just say 12 years, if you decided to do it each year. I think that perhaps a better approach would be to make that decision on a year-to-year basis, depending upon what projects are being recommended for HERF funding.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilman Chapados.
Gregory, quick question on that. If we were to adopt a resolution, do we have to put a number in there, or can we just say we approve a withdrawal and then we'll decide on the number when it's appropriate to do so?
I would work with Dennis as well as with Greg Swartz, who's our financial advisor, if you will, on structuring it. But as I understand it, you could simply say general fund contributed $6 million to the grade separation project, which is a legitimate HERF funding. So HERF would be responsible for reimbursing the general fund as determined by the city council annually.
Right.
Okay.
So it would
That's
be
what I thought.
something like that.
Okay.
And I think that there's, so when we talk about, as you all know very well from city budgeting, you know, there are certain funds and buckets of money, quote unquote, that you can pull from, but they're restricted. They have limitations as to what you can use them for. Typically, out of the general fund, you have a broad-based discretion, and that's what we deal with our budgetary authority each and every year. But the nature of the 347 grade separation project meant that we needed to pull money to put to this project to make sure that it went through. But in that process, again, this reimbursement out of HERF funds, which is, again, highway user revenue funds, right, which would allow us to reimburse the general fund, and therefore it is as though we pulled that money out. Here's my only concern with that. Is that I think we have to be careful a little bit. While money is fungible to some extent, if you have the money in the general fund, I want to be careful that we don't technically bind the hands of future councils. That's why the recommendation was made just by now by Gregory to say, you know, if we can look at this through the BFO on a yearly annual basis. So while you keep this on the next 12 years slate, assuming a couple of things. We assume that HERF transfers continue, right? We've seen those swept before. We might see them swept again. We might see them restored. We just don't know because that comes from the state legislature. So to the extent in which we had to take this step, and if we go down this route, I didn't want to make sure that we didn't make it permanent, but rather we addressed it year over year over year so that we could make the transfer if the funds were there. The secondary portion is that, you know, if you looked at that number that Gregory pointed out earlier, that was about 800,000, you know, and there are up to about 950 is what we get from HERF year over year. You know, that reality is that, again, that could go up, that could go down. And while sometimes we are required to do building projects that we really need that money to be able to pull from to do a building project, right? And that's where you want to pull it from because that's what it can be allocated. And I mean, road project is probably a better way to put it, a road project, a building of a road. And so, you know, I didn't want to make sure that we put this on an automatic, you know, debit, so to speak, and that every year $500,000 came out. And then when we had this road project that we needed to have done, then that we restricted ourselves. And so, again, I think that this is a good idea as it pertains to looking at it, exactly, giving us more flexibility, putting more money back into the general fund from that reimbursement standpoint, because it does comply with the law as it pertains to you know, what we used the original $6 million for. But again, it gives us that flexibility on the back end to say, if we find ourselves in a difficult situation, we can deal with that year over year versus just having to make a 12-year commitment period and put us in some difficulty. So yeah, giving us that flexibility is a good thing.
I would like to highlight for you a second resolution that I would propose you create, and that is for a general fund reimbursement of the PSPRS, the $1.8 million. That would simply identify the amount of money that we intend to set aside each year to reimburse the general fund so that we then build the general fund balance back up.
And Gregory, one of the things, I mean, this is kind of the same as the fire truck, basically. We give ourselves a loan in order to pay this backdated amount, right, according to the lawsuit that was settled with PSPRS and the whole reforms that went on in 2011 by the legislature. So that being said, this is a loan from one side of the books to another. And then what we would do is on the monthly basis, based on the fact of what we pay back, we would put it back into the fund balance, back into the other side of the books. And so what was the anticipated, I mean, I guess it depends, but what was the anticipated payoff on that? Do we know?
We would love to get more information, and I'll defer to Kathy. The best information that we have at this point is the information that we have conducted or developed ourselves of the 1.8, and that's based upon calculations that our Human Resources Director put together. We have not heard at this point from the state, so we don't know when payments are going to be started. There's still an outstanding issue of interest. We don't have any idea of what interest they will charge, and if they charge interest, who's going to be responsible for covering the cost for it. Right. So we think that the 1.8 million is a good number to budget for at this point. I would hope that they wouldn't expect us to make a lump sum payment, but they could. So we have to prepare for that. Kathy, anything to add?
Yeah, but I guess the base and the crux of my question is do we transfer over, you know, because if they freeze, because the state legislature or the lawsuit allows us to be made whole on what we pay, so it allows us to freeze what we're putting into current PSPRS payments for these individuals. So therefore, it frees up a payment that goes out now. And so based on that, I guess my question is if 1.8 is the outflow from one side of the books to the other, in order to put that money back by not outflowing it to the state at this point, how long will that take based on what we pay a year? I mean, is it going to be $250,000 a month? Is it $250,000 a year? I mean, I'm just trying to get a gauge for how long it's going to take.
It's probably about $750,000 a year that we're paying. That's for everybody. Right. So this, I'm assuming the repayment that we get to be exempt from, the contributions, will only apply to those individuals who are in the Tier 1 category. Sure. But that amount of detail hasn't been provided to us yet, exactly how that credit memo process is going to work. That's how the Public Safety Personnel Retirement System describes it.
So let's just say we make it, again, it's probably an overestimate, but let's just say it's $500,000 what we pay to public safety, and then the other $250,000 is the rest of the city employees, right? I mean, I guess we're not putting into public safety there, right?
Right.
So in theory, it could be anywhere from, depending on interest, 2 years, 3 years, maybe 4 years based on interest, right? If I'm doing the kind of a pseudo calculation, right? $500,000 a year.
Mayor, I think that's a good estimate, and I would expect 2 years we'd be paying ourselves back.
Okay.
Yes.
That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
The items that are identified as staff have been incorporated into the budget, into the proposed budget. Those that are not identified, as well as, let me comment, as well as those recommendations made by the BFO, have all been incorporated into the proposed budget that you are considering tonight. What has not been included are the seed monies for cultural affairs and veteran affairs, as well as certainly we have not allocated any funding from HERF to general fund. So I would look for direction from you on whether how would you like for us to move forward with the seed money, and then secondly, whether you are in agreement with the creation of a resolution for the HERF, as well as a resolution for the reimbursement of PSPRS.
Okay, so council, let's actually start with the second one first, if we can, on the HERF one, on the reimbursement and the flexibility we just spent some time talking about. Councilor Smith, did you have something on that one?
No, I was just going to support that one.
Oh, okay. Any other questions or concerns on that? Any discussion items on that? Is it pretty straightforward in giving us some flexibility there, and then basically reimbursing the general fund, which is a good thing. Okay, so that one's a go. And then let's turn it over to the seed money and the 7,000, Councilmember Smith, you had something on that, and then we'll go to Councilmember Chapados.
Gregory, what other BCCs were given seed money?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Smith, the only other committee that was provided with seed money that I'm aware of, was the Age-Friendly Committee. You allocated a little over $5,000 for seed money. That was for the Senior Expo project, and that occurred in November of 2015.
So was that seed money, or was that designated out of council's discretionary funds? Because I was under the impression it came from some of my discretionary, and I think Councilmember Chapados, and so I am not aware of any other committee that's been given seed money. And Manfredi gave some also. Oh, no, I don't think it was everybody, was it?
I don't think everybody.
For the age-friendly. So that would be my concern, is that we're giving seed money to 2 committees out of however many BCCs that we have. And age-friendly is one that comes to mind that could use seed money for that very purpose that you have defined. That would be my concern.
Could I jump in here for a sec? I actually consulted with Mr. Jackson today about this. We did come before council and approval for a little over 5,100, but thanks to the sponsorship initiatives, the council discretionary funds, we did not use any city general fund monies. And we actually had a carry forward balance at the end of that first year of $1,600. So, and we continue that trend today. We still have carry forward balance. So it was, with the combination of sponsorship dollars, grants, and council discretionary funds, we did not use any other city funds for that.
So I guess, Councilmember Wade and I had a chance to talk a little bit earlier about this. Excuse me. Well, I think both of these committees will do great things, the Cultural Affairs and the Veterans Affairs Committee. And while I understand that when you budget now, because if you don't do it now, you can't spend it later, right? It would have to come out of contingency or some other funding. But I guess my only beef here is that the difference between this and the age-friendly one is the age-friendly was meeting, had a topic and a challenge they were trying to meet, and then came to us with that issue and resolved it, and then ultimately, back-funded it with all of these other things so that ultimately there was no expenditure in the beginning. So it's not to say that the Cultural Affairs and Veterans Affairs won't have those same issues, and it is nice to have that money on the side in the docket. But at the same time, I think also, and Councilmember Wade and I had a chance to talk about this earlier, is that I think we also have to be fair, as a council, from this dais, at that time, I recall that we talked about not providing money for these committees. This was intended to be, and it wasn't to say, go out there and good luck. It was to say, we want to make sure they have a seat at the table. We want to take in those concerns and those issues, and we wanted to deal with them. And we also knew that as they got up and running, that they would come back with questions and events they wanted to do. So, I guess at the end of the day, while I am accepting of the fact you have to budget before you can ever get to that point, and as they run throughout the course of this coming fiscal year, they may come back. Let's be fair on the Cultural Affairs Committee. While they're still new meeting as an official city committee, they've actually been meeting already, for the course of the last year, and they've already come up with things that they have done. And so it is feasible to understand that they would perhaps be closest on the docket to coming back with something. But if I was to try and find a happy middle ground here, at least just from at this point in the conversation, I think 7,000 is too much. I think that I would love to see it that it brings down to 5 or to 4. We talk about the other committee that started with 5,100. Bring that down, and then as the Veterans Affairs Committee gets up and running, it's there, it's on the side, but it's not a mandate to spend it. It's simply that if there was some topic they were trying to tackle, and by the time they got up and running, and they developed their plan, and then it comes back around and it's at the end of the fiscal year, well, then it's been budgeted for now because that's how we do this, right? So. Again, I'm trying to be fair here on both sides, but I think 7,000 is too much on either side, but I can see where Cultural Affairs may have a sooner need for it, but I would like to see it come down. And then on the Veterans Affair, again, not to say that they aren't super organized and come up here in 3 months and have this great thing they're trying to do. And frankly, they too have also done things. I mean, Councilwoman Gussie and previous Councilmember Kimball have helped sponsor the veteran stand downs, and there's expenses that go along with that too. So, again, just trying to think out loud here as we debate this issue, because this is very much what we do at the BFO, is we go through this and we hash this out and, we come to some conclusion. But those are my thoughts on it as it stands at the moment. I'm reduce it down to each one being 5 or 4, so it would be a total of 10 or 12. Correct. I mean, total between the two of them. Yes. Councilmember Chapados, Councilmember Wade.
Okay. This is brand new territory for us, and I think that as we see more of these types of committees coming forward, there definitely is going to be a financial aspect to what they do as an extension of council. But that is my main point, that as an extension of council, what I would like to see is that we establish a BCC fund and not fund any one committee specifically, because you have a number of other committees that may want to do some initiatives. I know, for example, the Transportation Advisory Committee, Planning and Zoning, they occasionally take road trips, or there's the ACA or APA conference that they had the opportunity to attend. So what I'd like to see is let's just establish a BCC fund, decide on the amount, and then as an extension of council, let's have those committees come back to this body and say, this is what we've identified as a project, this is our proposed budget, this is how we intend to fund it, we're seeking sponsorship dollars, or we're going to have an admission fee, or a hybrid of whatever, and let's take it step by step. Because I think we have to incentivize our committees to be able to do some things on behalf of the community, but we also have to look at sponsorship as a realistic funding mechanism. Thanks to Reverend Jackson and to some of our contacts, we had excellent results with funding the Age-Friendly Senior Info Expo. And I think that to me is, without trying to say to the committee members, well, you need to go out in the community and ask for money. That's not the intent here at all. If we have a fund that council can decide how much we allocate and for what, it puts the incentive on the committee to come back and say, we'd like to do X. This is our budget, this is our request. If they offset that with additional sponsorship dollars, it just goes right back into that fund.
Councilmember Wade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Both of the suggestions and recommendations are good ideas and something you can live with. I would say, though, and it's unfortunate that I would say this, but there are some organizations that can go out and sponsor and get sponsorships a little easier than others based just on what their programs are and where they are. That's not to say that they shouldn't be responsible organizations and do just that and have that happen. The term seed money is one that is not very tasteful even to me, because it's making a suggestion that you've got kind of had your hand out to try to do something. I like the idea of establishing a BCC fund and having organizations come forward and say, this is an idea that we're working on, this is something that we're trying to put together, and so we're going to need some dollars to order some equipment or bring on a guest speaker or things of that nature that you may or may not have readily available. And as you said, budgeted up front, making sure that you know that this is what you have is, I would say, more of a BCC contingency fund than an item that's budgeted there, because it is contingent upon you actually doing something. You present whatever your program is, you bring that to council and say, this is what we're trying to do, and this is how we're trying to work it. So I particularly like both of them. I think $5,000, based on what I have done in terms of supporting the Cultural Affairs Committee, as well as the veterans, I contribute to both as well, and others also. So it's, as far as my contingency fund is concerned, I try to make sure that, it gives some recognition to others. I'm kind of quiet about that, actually. But, I think it encourages those other organizations to go out and seek sponsorships or whatever, but it also gives them the comfort of knowing that if I'm not getting the opportunities that I need from some of the other revenue sources, that I at least may have a couple of dollars over here that I can work with, and as long as I can present a decent program, then it would be available for us. So,
Mayor?
Yes, let's go to Councilwoman Gussie and come back to Councilmember Chapados.
I think we all get the same amount as far as contingency, our own, discretionary funds. So I could recall one year where I used my discretionary funds for Hispanic Heritage Month, for the Let's Move program, and the Veteran Town Hall. So that really absorbed a large amount of my funds that I could be using for travel with the council or for whatever reason. So I think it's a great idea. I don't know who came up with the idea of actually getting some seed money, and I know you don't like the word seed money, but I think it's great because these are items I think that we all should be involved with. You know, Hispanic Heritage Month, only because I'm the only Latina up here, shouldn't be only up to me to make sure I organize this. And I think the Cultural Affairs Committee is excellent for the fact that they'll be able to do this work on behalf of the entire city, not on behalf of one council member or one council member's budget. So I think it's excellent, and I like the recommendations.
Yes, let's go to Councilmember Chapados and then Councilmember Manfredi.
Yeah, the whole issue of sponsorship, too, it brings back another point in that herein is where I see the value of us as council liaisons being involved with these committees. A lot of it was the networking and the people that we know. But it's also very important that we have the right staff liaison. And I'll use Reverend Jackson as an example. With his networking and the people that he knows and serves with, that was a natural, well, I have a relationship established, I'll make the ask. But I think it's also contingent upon us, too, as council members and the staff liaisons that we have to maybe suggest names or help facilitate that sponsorship. We can always support things as a council member with our discretionary funds, and I will continue to do so as I know my fellow council members do. But this whole thing of sponsorship, I think we have to take more of a holistic approach to it in terms of if these are truly extensions of council and we see value, and we've added in the last 2 years 2 new committees, we also need to take a better look at how do we fund and support these committees financially, because there's going to be more coming to us. I mean, the Arts Council or the Arts Commission and Culture Commission is the next one to possibly come before council. There's going to be another funding issue. So I think establishing somehow to have a funding mechanism, but not necessarily saying it's seed money or it's dedicated to one particular group. It's a fund that all can have access to, but there's going to be some requirements to meet.
Councilman Manfredi.
We've all contributed to different committees and helped and used our discretionaries. So I think it's a great idea that Councilmember Chapados brings up, in that instead of $7,000 for cultural affairs, $7,000 for veteran affairs, $7,000 for the arts, $7,000 for, and it's just going to grow and grow. We create a fund that's 20 grand, 15 grand, whatever it is, you decide. Then that is used for, not, I guess, seed money, but right. But it's so if Cultural Affairs comes to us and says they want to have an Irish American festival in Copper Sky, and it's going to cost them $1,500, and they come to us and ask us for $1,500, but they say we're looking for sponsors, but we want a $1,500, and then they get some sponsors, and then it winds up only $750. That's good, right? So I'm good with it. I'm good with creating a fund, we call it a BCC, Contingency Fund, for a certain amount of money, and we don't have to worry about seed money and saying that's their money, that's their money. It's one fund, and they come to us and ask us for it and give us a presentation, tell us what they're trying to do, ask for $1,500, ask for $10,000, whatever it is, and then we decide as a council, sure, I'm good with it.
Councilmember Chapados, Councilmember Smith, Vice Mayor.
I think the one caveat I would add for council to consider is that sometimes because of relationships, if a specific sponsorship is asked for and it's monetary, there may be restrictions or expectations on the part of that sponsor that it will be used for this project. And the Senior Info Expo is a perfect example. We got funding based on the alliances and the topic matter that they said from year to year, we would like you to use this money for that project. And having worked with Brenda and Jackie and being able to track the expenses for the Senior Info Expo, I think we have the mechanism in place to do that fairly easily. But I just wanted council to consider that there may be expectations on the sponsorship dollars to use it purposely for a specific project.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want to support Councilmember Chapito's suggestion of a bucket for all of BCCs. I think it's important. The reason I say that is I can understand easily from the cultural and the veterans why it's easy to come up with one or two things right now. But just as an example, I know that the Art Task Force, although they're just a task force at this point and probably don't need to spend any money, they were asking if the Arts Committee was going to have funds. And then also just on age-friendly alone, true, we do the Info Expo, but we're also trying to improve communications for seniors, and there are funds needed to come up with a communication delivery platform for hard paper materials. So you can just come up with a variety of things, and then I know P and Z as well. So I would support one versus supporting just the two, or each with a specific amount.
Thank you, Vice Mayor, and then Manfredi.
May I make one last comment? The one thing I like about it is that it brings the BCCs back to us. It's a form of communication which really enhances communications, which they're all eager to have with council as well. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Mr. Mayor, if we were to accept the one bucket list, does that mean it would preclude Copa Shorts and the art groups coming to us individually like they did last year for money, and others that might come to us asking for money? Because surely they will do that. So should we tell them we have a bucket list, or we just continue to give our individual descriptions?
It's a great question. It's a great question. Yeah, go ahead and follow on.
This would be. Sorry about that. It's a great question, Vice Mayor. I think this is BCCs only. So only a BCC, like, they would come to us for that bucket. The Copa Shorts and every other organization in Maricopa that asks us for discretionary funds, they'll still come to us and they'll email us like crazy and ask for that stuff, and we can donate to them and help those our way. But this bucket itself would be just for BCCs, I believe, if that's the intention.
And I would kind of add to that, I think we have more control over the BCCs and that,
Yes,
as the overseers, if you will, of what's taking place. And the request I like, again, going back to what Councilmember Smith said, that it's an opportunity for them to come back to us as we are the ones who have set them on their pace.
Okay, but let me add a word of caution there on this. I too think that having a BCC fund is a good idea in concept. But let's look at the breakdowns. I mean, and I don't know how much time I want to spend on this tonight. I mean, we are just trying to get through this as a whole, but this is an important discussion. But okay, so let's say the Veterans Affairs Committee has two upcoming events that they want to spend. Let's just say the full $14,000 is in this BCC fund, right? So they come and they say, we want to spend it on this. Well, that's viable, right? And then Cultural Affairs comes and says, well, we're going to do 3 major events, and they spend, and that's viable. And now what we've got left over is $1,000. But you have the P&Z group come and say, well, wait a second, we need to take a training trip to here, and it's going to cost $1,500. Well, is it a little too late? Because they didn't ask soon enough? I mean, because the conference came at the end of the year? I mean, to what extent do we regulate this? And then let's go back to the discussion we just had, 4 weeks ago, where we suspended, or 6 weeks ago, where we suspended the nonprofit funding group that was actually intended to dive into these types of things. So we're about to create something that really should have them diving into these things. But then at what point do you sick them on it? I mean, it's going to happen over different times. So, I think that the problem here falls is that if we create the BCC line item, that's great. But I think you have to subsection out the line items. And while, we were hesitating from doing this here, I think you have to, because you have to create an overarching total sum. Because the problem is going to fall is what happens when we create additional committees. I mean, at what point does this not balloon out of control, to which every committee has some great grandiose idea that they want more dollars from. And so the number just going to keep inflating. And so while I am absolutely not opposed to doing this and having the ability to do these as extensions of council, because that is what we're trying to accomplish, I think we have to set parameters on it, on how we're going to deal with it. And if we want to sit here and go through every thing that comes back to us, from requests, that's great, but are all the requests that come early in the year going to get funded in full and then nothing out the back? I think we have to give each of these some sort of a budget to go off of so that they can prioritize what they want to do over the course of that year. Maybe they backload all their stuff, you know, maybe Veterans Affairs Committee backloads all their stuff and spends their allocation, you know, in the latter half of the year. But that doesn't preclude planning and zoning going to a training activity earlier in the year because the funds are still there for them. So I think we just have to be very careful as to what we do here. If I'm for the total BCC, I'm for adding additional things in there, but you're gonna have to go through and line item who's getting what. Otherwise, they're not gonna know how to plan, and they're gonna come and they're gonna spend it all. And then it becomes political again to some extent because it's nonprofit funding in a different version all over again, and that's what we tried to eliminate. And so I think we have to give that some thought. And so I'm not sure if this is the forum to keep doing this, if we should take this back to the BFO, because what we're doing today is we're creating a first draft adoption of the budget. Am I correct in that, Gregory?
That's correct.
And so there is still time to come back with a final draft and additional modifications.
As I understand the budget process, you can go down, but you can't increase.
So we would have to set some sort of a cap tonight, and then if you wanted, if council wanted us, the BF to go back and go back through it, or whatever you wanted to do. But that's, I just wanted to throw that out there. So Councilmember Chapados and then Councilmember Manfredi.
Yeah, Mayor, I think that the nonprofit funding issue is moot in this point because the nonprofit funding issue was not city committees. It was somebody from the outside seeking funding, and it was based on a percentage of the general fund. With this, if we identify an amount for a fund or a line item, I think we can do the same thing policy-wise that we did with the nonprofit funding and cap the ask at any one time. And ensure, I mean, it would be contingent upon the 7 of us to say that it's equitably distributed. And then there's always that contingency on, unanticipated expenditures. If somebody comes forward and has a really great idea and we say, I'm sorry, but the funds aren't there, that's what contingency is for.
Yeah, but I think it totally reduces your ability to plan throughout the course of the year what projects you're going to put forward.
If you put a cap on any individual ask, or you can only ask so many times during, the bucket's not going to be a deep bucket. So that's going to limit people right off the bat. And let's see what our committees can do in terms of doing their own sponsorship. I mean, one of the things that the Age Friendly did is we added fees. We created a revenue stream. I see that as a viable funding option for some of these committees, for some of the stuff we do. There's other things that you want to do purely from a goodwill public relations standpoint, but maybe this is something that the BFO should talk about further, but let's take the same approach we did with the BCC task force. Let's get invite the chairs of the committee to come to the table with us and say, give us your input. What are your ideas?
Councilman Manfredi.
I think the simple solution today is set a dollar amount of $20,000 for today. That's where we'll talk, right? And then BFO can hash it out. I think a simple way to stop spending it all really quickly is first require a match from the committee. So require a match. So if you come to us with a $2,000 you raise in private financing, we can give you a $2,000. Also, say no one ask can be more than 20% of the fund balance. So that's simple.
Honorable Mayor, council members, if I can make a recommendation on this, I think one of the reasons that the Age Friendly Committee is so successful is because they took a lot of time to plan.
Yeah.
They created a strategic plan and now they're executing that plan. So maybe one of the requirements before you're able to ask for funding is maybe you should have a strategic plan in place, and maybe the initial ask is just for funding to have a facilitated strategic plan process. And then we can identify throughout the year what each committee is proposing to do and the amount of funding that's going to be associated with it. So I think establishing an amount tonight would be a prudent thing to do, but only recognizing that each of the committees will need to start with the development of a strategic plan.
Yes, Councilor Wayne.
And I'll also, excuse me, I'll also add too that with the Age Friendly specifically, there was a staff member that was working for that effort, kind of full-time or part-time, but working for that effort, as opposed to either the veterans or the cultural affairs source. That will help those other organizations to be a little more efficient, if you will, follow the same example, and if we could use that, the individual resources as well and contacts that they have, that would be helpful for those other BCs as well. So I think we can, one of the things that the Cultural Affairs Committee was tasked with was to reach out to other committees and find out how they're doing things, how they're getting sponsorships, how they're doing specifically to control and function, their organization's function. So I think by doing that, we can be productive.
Councilman Manfredi, did you have something? I thought you were next.
Just, maybe I was off with the 20,000. If we can go down, we can't go up.
That's
So
correct.
when you go to BFO and discuss it, I think tonight we set it at 25 then, and then hopefully you guys come in at when you talk about it in BFO, you lower it. But we'd have to set an amount today that we're kind of okay with. So if it's 25, I know there's 2 committees that have somebody that is, that employee of the city works with the committee. That's the Youth Council, and I think the Youth Council already has a budget. I'm not sure. I think they get a budget of like $5,000 or something like that. So that's the only committee that
$5.
gets $5. I don't know. So the Youth Council is the only committee that actually has a budget. Well, technically, the Age Friendly has a budget because they have an employee. So those 2 have budgets already in place. The rest of them have no budget. So I would say, set it at 25. You guys hash it out in BFO, bring it back to us at the next meeting, and then we go from there.
Okay, Councilmember Chapados, thank you.
Yeah, and I would support what Councilmember Wade said in that the staff liaison and sometimes the council liaison is the critical point of contact there. But that's also what I meant about taking a holistic approach. The one thing that we don't do, and I'm glad to hear you say the Cultural Affairs Committee has this directive, we need to sit down with the committees as a council. If they're an extension of us, we haven't done that. And we've had specific requests from several of them to have a joint meeting with council. But I think that's going to be part of the strategic planning process is council needs to give clear and specific direction to our BCCs to say, here are our expectations, our goals for you, and get that feedback from them in order for this to work. But I would support the 25,000 moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think, when I think as a member of the BFO, I think of that number being far less than 25,000, just appropriating it tonight from the percentage of going down, not up, obviously. But I think I have to go back to, again, age friendly, and that is that the one thing that I just cannot get past us here, and my colleague and I might disagree with this a little bit, but the outcome is still the same, and that is that the benefit that comes for the age friendly committee is that every time you do those things, you garner sponsorships. And so, like you said, it's a proud point of being able to say we've spent no money from the city on this. And so while we're talking about matches and things, I think that that's great on the surface, but the reality is it's not always feasible. Sometimes you're going to do a small project here. If it's a big project over there, then that's the easy thing to go out and say, hey, we're doing this great event, so we're trying to get sponsorship dollars for it. If you just need to do some printouts of something, you're not going to get a match for that. I think we have to be careful on how we do that. But ultimately, I don't want to preclude the fact that when I look at cultural affairs, when I look at veterans affairs, those are both committees that have absolute great possibilities to go out and get great sponsorships, and I think that they should. I think that they ought to be tasked with that. That
should be their charge.
Yeah, I completely agree, because I think that that's the purview they operate. While they are a member of the BCCs, they're a different member. They have a different objective than does a planning and zoning commission that's established by statute, than does BOA that's established by statute. So I really have to see that while they're the same, they're different. Okay, if that makes sense. And so I really want to make sure that while we may appropriate this money, we may figure out a parameters to set on them, and we may come up with some things. I think we need to also include that charge that I don't know if fundraising is the right word, but certainly sponsorship dollars to offset expenditures of this budgetary authority here should be there, so that it really does free up those dollars for training. To these other BCCs that can't go out and fund. No, there's not going to be any P&Z fundraising. It's just not going to happen, right? Because then you hit quid pro quo problems, So that's not the idea there. Yeah, exactly. That's right. Where'd you get your funding from? The developer. Yeah, exactly. That's not going to go over well. Exactly. So I think this is the type of thing that we have to be looking at when we talk about this type of a fund. We have to say they're the same, but they are different. And they're different charges. Yes, Councilman Wade.
Sorry, and not to belabor it, but I just want to say that I'm very much appreciative of being a part of an organization, this body, that we can have this kind of dialogue and discussion in an open forum and be positive and supportive of one another. So regardless of what comes out of that, at least, I think I got my money's worth tonight. Thank you.
Definitely.
Well, we're not done yet.
All right, so are we in agreement with then setting a $25,000, sending it back to the BFO, and then we'll, reconvene and hash out a few other little things and then bring it back before you for a final budget?
Is that
as
the
we move
figure
forward?
that we've agreed upon? 25?
No, that's what was thrown out there.
That's the max.
That's the max that's thrown out there, but to bring it
I
back.
can't support 25.
Okay, what can you support?
20.
Okay, so there's a 20 out there, you guys?
What we're saying is set the max right now because we can't go
right,
up on it. So we
yeah.
set it at 25
All right.
today, and the BFO with direction to come back at 20.
I can tell you as a member of the BFO that I will be hard
Yes.
pressed to come back at anything over 20.
Don't come at 25. Just setting it now.
So are you okay with that then,
Yes.
based on that concept?
Yes.
All right, so we're going to set this at 25, but BFO,
Probably 15.
15.
I'm going to come back at 4. No, I'm just kidding. All right. We good with that? So let's
I am.
proceed. We can go from
Mayor, there are a couple, I just want to highlight the other. Our intention would be to come back to you with a resolution for repayment of general fund for PSPRS, also a resolution that would create the repayment from the HERF fund for the 347 grade separation project.
Yep.
The reason I separate those out is that I believe the motion to add items to the budget will need to reflect what you want added. And those are simply just direction. A couple of more slides. This slide identifies the full levy amount of 6.18 and the amount of funding that we are projecting to receive from that levy. Again, it also shows the reduction of the secondary property tax. A few things that are on the horizon. Certainly, this next fiscal year will represent the last contribution from the auction to cover operating cost for Copper Sky. That they are currently contributing $1,480,000. So with that in mind, in part, Copper Sky will need to be restructured. And so we will need to bring in line expenses with projected revenues, recognizing that a contribution from general fund, at least as it relates to park maintenance, will be ongoing, most likely. But that process has already started. Our Community Services Director, Christy Reister, is heading that up. We will work very closely with the BFO in trying to develop that strategy before we bring that to the City Council. The property tax cap, I think I've commented on this each year. We still have not resolved that issue. I'm not sure that we will ever see those fundings. I think just based upon the way that the legislature is working, we have structured our budget to not depend on it. The PSPRS payment, there's still a lot of unknowns about what's going to occur with that, when the payments will be made, exactly how much we will be required to pay, including whether we'll need to cover the cost of any interest associated with it. Also included in this budget, also occurring this fiscal year, is a compensation and classification study. That may very well have some financial impacts. We believe that we're positioned well to auto-absorb those impacts within the various departments, or we would look to contingency funding for that. That's going to be the worst case scenario, though. Also, in November, we believe that the RTA The county is leading that effort to place that on the ballot. We are certainly hopeful that the citizens will be fully informed and make what they believe would be the right decision for the community. Did that skate it good enough?
Well threaded.
Okay. At this time, I would respond to any questions that you might have.
Councilmember Chapados, Councilmember Smith.
Gregory, I have two other questions about on the horizon. One has to do with the RTA, and it's my understanding that they're also bringing forth the possibility of addressing an east-west corridor as one of the projects that could be funded through the RTA. I want to make sure that we've looked at that carefully and that we've provided some kind of mechanism if we need to do anything on our end that has a financial impact, that we can absorb that. And also, we need to bring forward the Australia Gin Business Park. Based on the preliminary discussions with the Economic Development Plan, I think that's going to be a project that we need to focus heavy on and prioritize for the next fiscal year. So I want to make sure that that is also on the horizon.
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Chapados, the design for the fire administration building, it was intended that that administration building will be in the Australia Gin Park. You will still have some decisions to make regarding the size of that facility. We had talked about it briefly, about building a structure that would be in excess of what fire administration needs today so that they could grow into it. And in the meantime, renting out some of those spaces for economic development purposes. So that will come back to you. As you know, you have a contract with the Boyer Group, so we'll have to see how that plays out.
Councilman?
Thank you, Mayor. Gregory, I'm going to go back to my cart before the horse concern in that we haven't talked about the ED strategic plan. What parts of it do we like? Do we like all of it? Do we pull anything out of it? But for this purpose and this discussion, the 2017-18 budget, considering the fact that you've indicated we can't go up, if we wanted to do one element of that strategic plan in 2017-18 that was going to cost money, does that indicate that I have to remove something in order to make that happen, or how do we go about doing that?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Smith, I believe that that is what contingency funding is for. The economic development strategic plan, we would have liked to have started that process sooner so that we could have had the information sooner. That didn't occur. I think contingency funding would be an appropriate funding source if there are projects in that strategic plan that you deem worthy of moving forward with and have a financial impact.
What if we saw that a goal out of the strategic plan was more important than something we currently had in the budget, and we wanted to do a swap?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Smith, at any time, the Mayor and Council have the option of changing the numbers within the budget as you see fit.
All right, that answers that question. Regarding on the horizon, because I kind of keep a running list of the on the horizon items myself as well. What have we done to consider what we're setting ourselves up for regarding Santan Incorporation? I know it's not going to happen probably 2017-18, but by hiring additional 10 people, what are we setting ourselves up for if Santan Incorporation happens the following year and causes us to have insufficient funds for those additional 10 people?
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Smith, whether Santan Valley incorporates, it's so unpredictable. I think that if they do incorporate, there are certainly challenges, but also opportunities. One of the areas that I think you and I and Chief Stahl have briefly discussed is the opportunity to incorporate them as a part of our dispatch operations. So, we will have a real opportunity there. And it depends upon how quickly they incorporate. No one believes that they will incorporate the entire development area at one time. They think that it will be a more gradual approach. It's difficult knowing we certainly have an idea of if they incorporate everything at once, what will occur. That's just a very remote possibility, though.
So at this point, we've not considered Santan incorporation for future years into our current budget and what that might impact us for.
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Smith, I don't know that I would say that completely. I think that just based upon our fund balance, we are identifying funding that would be needed in case non-considered issues arose. So we would have an opportunity to use that fund balance to give us a buffer of time to make adjustments in our own budget.
I think that along with the auction ending next year brings me great concern in regards to, and also knowing, as I've mentioned multiple times, economists are expecting a small recession at some point. So it's building up to a point of almost uncomfortableness for me, but it's something that I'll ponder and talk about during, if we're going to have an additional BFO meeting.
Yeah, I think what it comes down to, you know, the incorporation of Santan, I was really worried about it when it went through this year in the legislature. And one of the things that I've become somewhat more comfortable with is that they're incredibly disorganized. And not only that, but then they have to decide from you got to remember, a lot of people moved to Santan because they didn't want to be incorporated, right? So it's kind of the same issues that we talk about with Thunderbird Farms or Hidden Valley and annexation and those types of things, right? And so they don't want to be incorporated. Now that's not to say that they can't get their act together, but I can tell you right now that Queen Creek and Florence are already on the move. You know, they've already started annexing some of the portions that you know would or set forward in their plans to annex some of the portions that are in Santan now. But because they're unincorporated, they would be then annexed into those respective municipalities, and they're the income-producing portions, right? They're the Walmart supercenters and the movie theaters and those types of things that are there. Where Santan is a kind of a hospital that they are counting on for their own revenues. And now you take and add on top of that the law that just passed with the budgetary issues about sales tax revenues and basically any voter-approved tax. And I might be overstepping my bounds here. I don't see Dale out there. Dale's over there. But as it pertains to, that's every 2 years, you know. And so I mean, depending on how you're right. Any time they incorporate 15,000 people, that's going to take a hit to the total pie, and we're going to take our subjective hit. But the fact that 100,000 people are going to come on the books, I just don't think that there's a reality and a feasibility there. I think we'd see maybe 30,000 at max, you know, and then even then it's probably questionable, and then we're probably looking 3 to 5 years out. I think you're right. I think we need to plan for it because it is going to be hit at some point. But at the same time, you know, what Gregory was trying to say is that I think that we also are planning on the fact that we will, while there is a recession on the horizon at some point, it could be 10 years from now, it could be tomorrow, but I think you're also hoping and looking for increased property values. You're looking at which comes increased property taxes or tax revenue that comes from that, as well as the fact that you're talking sales tax, retail increase as well. And so I think that hopefully cushions and buffers that a little bit, but as you know, you come to depend on it and you don't take advantage of what's on the horizon, then you are in difficulty. So got to kind of watch for that.
Honorable Mayor, Councilmember Smith, to further answer your question, one of the reasons that I'm more comfortable in recommending the staffing has to do with the savings that we're realizing in workers' comp insurance. We have a safety team. We know that this year, for example, that $400,000 is going to go to fund balance because we have a reduced mod, which means that we don't pay as much in insurance. We know that next year as well that our mod will go down again, which means we won't be paying as much in insurance. So most of the cost associated with those positions will be covered simply by the reduced cost that we're paying in insurance.
Council, other questions? Councilmember Wade.
I just have one quick question, Mr. Rosen. The percentage of revenue that the auction commitment is to Copper Sky, what is that? What does that represent?
That is a little over a fourth of the revenue. The total Copper Sky expenditure is about $4.6 million, and their contribution is, 1.4. You might as well say 1.5. So that's a significant amount. The remainder of that is through transfer from contingency. What's being proposed now is $1.4 million, and then memberships and kind of ancillary activity that occurs there.
Yes, Vice Mayor?
Gregory, I don't recall which page you're on when you're discussing the tentative budget. You dealt with development services. And you mentioned the inspectors. I thought we had had some discussion a while back about the need for 2 permanent inspectors as opposed to what you're suggesting. 2 added, but maybe only 1.5 being utilized.
Honorable Mayor, Vice Mayor, the intention there would be for those, what you approved were temporary inspector positions to get us through the remainder of this fiscal year. What's being proposed would be 2 permanent inspectors. One would be full-time for the full year. The second one would be 6 months, but it would really come in frozen, and so it would only be hired if the activity dictated a need for it.
Well, hopefully there will be a need.
We pray.
Any other slides or questions? I think that was the end of the slides, correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay. Any other questions? So there was somewhat of a legal question as per a recommendation for this. As we move to the motion of it, in the fact that we had a few areas which were under discussion, do we need to make the motion that includes those particular stipulations as far as coming back and, including in this versus, talking about later, or can we just approve the whole thing based on the discussion that took place?
Mr. Mayor, I think you can approve the budget as presented with those 2 stipulations. I would just add those, the 2 items that were discussed with regards to setting the contingency for the committee at 20,000, I think was what everyone agreed on. I don't think you took a vote on that.
No.
So, I mean, I don't know if you want to take those 2 votes first and then take with those, vote the whole budget in.
Okay. So if that's the case, then will you back the slides up here? Not this questions one, but back it up. Keep going, right there. So let's do a motion then first. I mean, and we're okay with that as pertaining to the fact that it's part of the budget, and it's not it's not an individual. There's not a 10.5 clearly here on the agenda. So
Right. I think that's just part of this discussion as it's been presented.
Okay. So can I have a motion to approve the 25,000 as it pertains to the budget for the BCCs, subjective to the BFO making a final recommendation and coming back to this council?
So moved.
So a motion and a second. Is further discussion on this item? No? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Then, as it pertained here to the HERF transfer that we were going to further delineate as well, then we need a motion on that as well.
So moved.
So we have a motion. Is there a second?
Support.
Okay, a motion and a second to deal with this HERF transfer in the form of a resolution and to come back, and we'll probably review it a little bit more in the BFO. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The other thing was the contingency fund.
Adding 40,000.
Adding 40, well, whatever those numbers totaled up to. Brenda, I didn't see what the total numbers were. I think they were 40 or 50,000. So adding that to the contingency for next year, but because of where they fall, we're trying to do it. It's just a fluidity of money there. So is there a motion for that?
So moved.
So there's a motion. Is there a second? Second. Any further discussion on that item? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. So I think, yes. Do we need to do something outstanding of PSPRS? I think you said that was already included in this budget recommendation, correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Not the reimbursement resolution?
Sorry.
The
I'm sorry.
The reimbursement resolution?
No, the reimbursement resolution is not, but we can bring that back at a later time because the funding has already been budgeted that we would be using.
So was there anything else that we talked about that we needed to add in this outside of the budget itself? So with that, can we have a motion to approve this budget right after that question?
For you. Were we doing this as a roll call vote? the budget, or we're gonna?
No. It's just, yeah, it's a tentative.
I'd like to read that.
Oh, okay, so absolutely. So, Councilmember Manfredi, I think you have a statement to make
Right.
before the budget is proposed and accepted.
Before we accept the budget, I'd like to say I currently have a contract to purchase a company called Maricopa over time. I do not have a conflict of interest in voting on this tentative budget because there are no specific line items in the budget for Maricopa. Rather, the budget contains general amounts of money for advertising city events and money that is spent during the year on by various city directors when they believe it's in the best interest of the city. These advertising dollars are spent with several different entities in which Maricopa is one. That's all.
Okay. So is there a motion to approve the budget as it has been outlined?
So moved.
There's
Second.
a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. And that concludes.
Honorable Mayor, I just have one other comment. I'd certainly like to recognize all of the department directors. A lot of work, as you know, goes into this process. A special recognitions for Brenda Hassler and her staff who stayed up very late trying to put these documents together. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our meeting for this evening, but we need to reconvene to E-session. I don't believe we need a motion for it, right? I mean, it's already, yeah, to go back in. We do need another motion for it?
So moved.
All right, so a motion, is there a second? Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
You guys rock.
We'll stand adjourned.